Welcome. I'm suffering today with this cold, but I wanted to make this video, which has actually become sort of three parts to it. The first, and this is beauty in the timing, it's a comment I've just received, and it sort of emphasizes non-financial reciprocal exchange. You see, the only stupid question is the one you are fearful to ask, because of concerns of how will it sound, what will others think of me for asking that question. Well, forget about everything outside of you. Ask the question. How is that a reciprocal exchange? Because I take responsibility of the fault being on my part. If you don't understand what I'm saying, then do please ask, and I will find another way to say it that may resonate better with you. And in doing so, there's the reciprocal exchange. I learn from you by the questions you ask, so I can refine the reply in a clearer manner. So that's the first part. See, beauty in the timing. The question comes, and out of it comes a little bit, what 1 minute and 40 seconds or so of being able to answer that. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of Symphony of the Spheres. Bit of a self-plug, sort of, in a way here. If you look in the channel playlists for Nothing and Half, it's describing our experience in this physical existence in terms of the symphony orchestra. How you are the conductor, the orchestra is the embodiment. But the real magic unfolds in the concerto. Be it a piano concerto, violin concerto, or whatever the solo instrument happens to be. Or even a combination like the flute and harp concerto of Mozart. So let's start with the etymology of concerto. So you've got con, which can be seen as something is a con, as in the sense of it's a scam, it's a deception. But con can also mean the bringing together of things, the combining. The N and the M are always interchangeable, so con and com very much go together. So concert, so you're making a concerted effort. The assertion inside oneself. You're coming together of your higher and your lower self. That's the con in this sense. Bringing things together in an effort, and it's going somewhere, hence it's concerto, concert two. Now generally a concerto is for a solo instrument and orchestra, and invariably it is 3 movements, and within those movements you will have a passage called a cadenza. What that is, between certain bar numbers will be what is called a free passage. Now it may be that the composer themselves has written the cadenza, it may be somebody else who has written the cadenza, or even the soloist themselves has taken, we just use for example bars 163 to 229, and as the performing artist you come up with your own variation on the themes which you can put together within that cadenza. So the concerto is very much like this reality. If you have a perception of it as being holographic and a simulation, and therefore that the physical bodies have a role to play that goes between those opening bars, shall we say, and the conclusion, the finale of that concerto. It is a set piece. The stave of the music represents like the timeline. Then you have the bar lines, the intervals, and then you have the three movements, which we could also compare to being youth, middle age, and old age, you could say. It's interesting how you've got music of the spheres is one description. Alan Watts says life is like a dance. It's not about getting anywhere, it's about enjoying the moment. But the cadenza, if you see this reality like as a simulation or a holographic universe, it sort of implies that the physical bodies have a set part to play, but within that part you have a huge cadenza in which you can write your own story within the frame in the external sense being the physical world. What readily comes to mind is the Beethoven violin concerto in D, which basically has a theme of bom, 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 4. Well, 4 is a door, as I said before. Another example would be something like, I forget which one it is, one of the two Liszt piano concertos. And you can almost hear the dialogue between the soloist and the orchestra. It's a bit like our higher self talking to our lower self. I've described this experience as being like an orchestra where you are the conductor and the orchestra, but now it is time to take spotlight and become the soloist. So you still have the conductor, you still have the orchestra, and I refer you to that playlist, Nothing and Half, where I go into further detail about what the different sections of the orchestra represent, the 4 elements effectively, the role that the conductor plays, and so on. Of all the arts, I mean, what is music? If it is just, we use this as an example, if it is just the printed score, it's not going to do a lot, is it? It's the one art that requires human participation to bring that music to life. It is a living art above all the other arts, effectively. Or, well, that is my opinion of it anyway. But the whole idea of the concerto, can I give you a story that sort of affirms that? And the answer is yes. That is the story known as David and Goliath in the Bible. Now, I think it's fair to say, regardless of whatever the origins of the stories that are in the Bible, where they come from, how far back they go, it is very much like everything else in this reality. It starts in the imagination and then becomes manifest in the physical reality. So, if we take it as being in a sort of roughly chronological order, you have Genesis 6:4, which talks about there were giants in those days, talking about pre-flood world, and also after, talking about after the flood world. Incidentally, to clear up any misconceptions, when we talk about titans and giants and humans, the only distinction is in the height. They are all human. Even the so-called fallen angels must be human, because how would they be compatible with humans to produce offspring called the Nephilim? So that they are human, whatever they are. But it's just perceptions of terms. So today we could say somebody over, I don't know, say over 6 foot will be classed as someone who is tall, which we could apply the term Titan to. Someone between, say, 6 foot and 5.5 foot, we could say is normal height, which you could say is giants. And then people of smaller stature, we could say are humans. But is there any distinction, really, apart from the height? So it's the same when we discuss titans, giants, and what we would call normal-sized humans. There is actually no distinction apart from the difference in the height, and applying a sort of measurement to distinguish the three groups, but effectively they are no different. So there were giants in those days. So then when we turn to after the flood, the biblical flood, we come to David versus Goliath. Well, Goliath is a giant, a larger human, effectively. Now, what is interesting, the passage in Genesis 6:4, well, 6 and 4 makes 10, so it's the beginning of something being implied. So it's talking about a completion and then starting again. So it's before the flood and after the flood. So now when we come to the David versus Goliath story, which you'll find in 1 Samuel 17, and the actual battle is described in verses 50 to 53. But what is interesting here is 1 Samuel 17, so you've got 1 and 1 and 7, which makes 9. Now the battle is from verses 50 to 53, so you've gone from 5 to 8, so you've gone from something that's referring to the 5 senses to 53, which is an 8, which is eternal, the number of eternity, of infinity. This is not a literal story. It follows the same pattern of something starts in the imagination and then becomes manifest into the physical. So a prime example of this would be an idea of building a house, giving that idea to an architect who will then draw up a plan based upon that idea, who then gives it to a building contractor who will then create the physical building which started as an idea. Likewise, what is basically given to you in the Bible, you could almost see as being like the backstory of a computer handbook in a game. What is interesting and somewhat revealing is when we start looking at the names of the characters, it tells you a lot. So we'll start with Samuel, the book, because this is first Samuel that this story is told. Samuel means God is heard. The other characters in that, the leader of the Israelites is Saul, which means prayed for. So you could say it's a wish. Goliath means captivity. David's father is named Jesse, which means the Lord exists. The Creator, in other words. Incidentally, Lord, or the term my Lord, would be a term of address to someone who is your father. You would say, yes, my Lord, to your father. So it's been literalized and secularized and carnalized into a physical story. And the last and perhaps the most important character is David. David means beloved. So he's the beloved son of Jesse. Jesse is the Lord exists. So that's saying the living God. I'd refer you here at this point, while it pops into my mind, listen to the Neville Goddard lectures. As he explains it, it is one playing all the parts. There is only one playing all the parts. It is the dreamer living out the dream in a fractalized form, in individual forms as us. That's the macro version of what is actually happening. This is, in this story of David versus Goliath, is the micro story. It is not an external story, or at least the idea was never an external story, but it has been told over and over sufficiently that it takes on a life of its own, and it becomes physically played out, and probably has played out in the physical, if what we see as history is actually even real. How do we know of anything before our existence in this physical form, in this present time, to know what was before? They're all stories that come to us effectively. So we've gone through what the names actually mean of the principal characters. Now, David, in this story, talks with Saul, who's this leader of the Israelites, the Israel light. And Saul means prayed for or wish. The wish of that light to come. As Neville Goddard explains it, the Son is not called Jesus. That is an aspect, another character of the Creator. The Son is called David. It is the Son, David, who will recognize the Father and call him my Lord. No one sees the Father except through the Son. This is an internal story that is actually happening here. So what actually is Goliath? Now, in the literal interpretations in the footnotes, from what it says about Goliath, I think it was 9 cubits and a span, or 3 cubits and a span, which comes out as 9.5 foot, because it's trying to literalize and explain this as a historical, secular history story, which it is not. It is a spiritual story. Goliath is captivity. But anyway, the explanation of 9.5 feet. Well, 9 is a number of completion. The half, it's stepping into the unknown. It's basically referencing, once you've done the completion in the physical, then it's a starting to reach beyond the crown, beyond the 7th chakra. Where do we want to go from here? So David, the beloved, he is given this armor by Saul, which he says, I'm not used to this. I don't need armor, because David is not a physical character. David is the Son. David is, let's put this into a physical context here. Take your own physical body. Compare that to the size of something that is no bigger than a pinhole. Would you not say that the ratio between the pinhole and the physical body would make the physical body appear to be like a giant through that comparison? Goliath means captivity. What Goliath represents is the physical body, the ego, the conscious mind that is now challenging the Christ consciousness, that internal conflict that goes on within inside us. We know that David is the son of Jesse. And again, I refer you to Neville Goddard lectures. Who is Jesse? It is a name of God. It even says Jesse means the Lord exists. It is saying the living God, effectively. And David is the son of the living God. This is all going on internally. So David steps out onto that battlefield. He's also a shepherd. He goes out and rescues the odd sheep and brings it back to the flock. In a way, it references Daniel wrestling the lion. So in a way, it explains that David wrestles with a lion and with a bear and overcomes obstacles. It's referring to what is going on inside you, but it is done in a way that is a parable or a metaphor. And how does David defeat this giant? He picks up 5 pebbles. Now the 5 pebbles represent your 5 senses. So David, who is the 6th sense, picks up the 5 senses. So they're all working in unison. He places 1 pebble into a sling, which effectively is the skin. And it's referenced in the New Testament when the story is repeated. It's expressed as Jesus comes, or Christ comes like a thief in the night. No one knows the time. Well, when David slings that pebble from his slingshot, how fast would that come? You wouldn't be able to see it coming. It would be like any projectile at high speed. And of course, where does it land on Goliath? Right where the mind's eye is. It embeds itself. It's effectively saying it is killing the ego. After now rendering Goliath unable to fight, David then takes his sword and cuts off the head of the giant. It sort of references about to kill the beast, you must cut off its head, effectively. Rearing its ugly head is an expression. The Goliath is when we are fully in this external world, stomping about and basically being tyrannical and wanting to have control over everything else, trying to take control of the is-real light, which is inside oneself. That is the David. You could say that this video is not for the collective. This video is a message for the individual. Now, in David, you all is what it is effectively saying. The David inside you, the beloved Son, that is in the solar plexus. It has to fall, of course, go to the root. That's where the battle will start. You bring down that Tower of Babel inside oneself. You kill that giant, that Goliath inside yourself. That effectively is what this story is all about. It is internal. It is overcoming the giant obstacles that we face inside ourselves, which can all be felt, and a lot of these are created by our thoughts. But we can also externalize this story even today. Imagine finding yourself in court and it is, say, you versus a local government authority or you versus a utility company. In comparison with the resources you have, compared to the financial resources that what you would be up against has, is very much a David and Goliath situation. It will seem intimidating. It will wear this brass, because that's all described about Goliath, it's very specific about this armor. But David doesn't need any armor. David has the armor of Jesse. It can't be seen. It's what it is referencing. He doesn't need to wear physical armor because it's not even a physical story. So I hope that has given you a deeper insight into what this particular story means. And of course, it's not just that story, it is the entire Bible. Again, I refer you to Neville Goddard. It is the dreamer dreaming that is creating the story. If we put the pauses in the right places, just like you need to do with music, you'll have rests for different instruments. You'll have rests where the whole orchestra will stop and a slight pause before maybe the soloist then will take up a theme. The soloist being the individual. And I've lost my train of thought. That's the way it goes. Maybe it'll come back, but I hope that this will give you a new insight into seeing that there are patterns in this reality. It all starts in imagination. It's come back now. So the phrase, "Our Father who art in heaven," is a bit like someone who's excited, can't wait to get the information out. It requires not reacting and just spilling it all out in one go. It requires a pause. It requires responding rather than reacting. So I would suggest that the correct way to say it and to hear it is, "Our Father, who art in heaven." So it's a question with an answer. It is telling you, it's making a statement, "Our Father." Well, who is our Father? It is art in heaven. What is art? Art is creation. So call it Oversoul, call it God, call it whatever you want to call it. The operant power that is there in this interactive field, it requires the Son, the David, to step forth, the beloved Son. That is in your solar plexus. That is in each and every one of you that is a real human being. That is why I say this message is not for the collective. This message is for the in David you all. Find that beloved Son within inside yourself. It's basically describing the Kundalini rising. It is describing what is a sort of... It's a misleading term of killing the ego. It's not actually... You can't kill the ego, because the ego is your individuality, but it is bringing it under control by cutting off the head of the ego, by cutting off the head of Goliath. David, the Son, is then now in control, is mastering the internal universe, the you-inverse, the micro. That is effectively what your mission is here in this physical existence, to find that Sun inside yourself, to experience that Kundalini rising. That Sun, that beloved Son, David, will address you and call you Father. You will then know who you truly are. Now, Father is not in the physical sense of being a male. It is Father in the sense of the one that plants the seeds, that has the potential for growth and expansion. But of course we're in a realm of duality, so not always is it the case that those seeds will fall on fertile ground. Some of them will fall on stony ground and will wither and not grow properly. That again is just another way of expressing, in an almost timeless sense, a way that is relatable to all ages, rather than putting it into an historical context, shall we say. A way of explaining things. So this message will not take root in many people, because they will probably have a belief system that will block that. It's infertile ground, infertile soil, because they're not open, they're not receptive to hear the message, they're not receptive to be able to weigh up the message and bring peace within inside oneself rather than this David and Goliath internal struggle that goes on. So I feel that sort of pretty much covered it. Wow, that's 30 minutes, so that's, I feel, plenty long enough. But just to reiterate, if I say things and they maybe don't make sense, then, and you've maybe played the video several times and still don't understand it, then I welcome you and invite you to either directly via email or messenger. Links are in the description how to get in contact with me, or you can put it in a comment on the video that you don't understand, or could I explain a certain bit again, and maybe say it in a different way that is more relatable. That again is something that is reflected in this external world. When you think of something, a big purchase like a car or a house or even clothing, you have to picture yourself in the thing. If you can't picture yourself, you're not going to buy it. It won't make sense to you. You won't want to accept that. But if you're open and you can picture yourself, then effectively I can convey the message, which hopefully will make more sense. That sounded very muddled, didn't it? I sort of half lost my train of thought of what I was trying to say. So, this is the thing. Acknowledge the infallibilities. They're not actually infallibilities. They're just, we don't come here, excuse me a minute, little cough break there. We don't come into this reality with the experience of the vocabulary, the experience of life. The heart knows, of course, but we have to open that dialogue inside ourselves and understand what is being communicated and be open and not put belief systems in the way of whatever is presented, but to be able to take it in and weigh it up for yourself. And then hopefully out of it you will be able to see the concerto, and you will also be able to take the path of the supernova soul or the errant or the path of the individual, and you'll be writing your own cadenza, shall we say. Right, that is it for this video. That's covered all the points, hopefully not too garbled. So it just remains for me to say, check the links in the description if you wish to get in contact with me, if you need help in any other way, in any way. I offer the 3-card tarot card readings, I offer Reiki healing, I offer the befriending service. Can't even speak. Are we in Mercury retrograde still? Yeah, if you're struggling with depression, anxiety or panic attacks, I know what that feels like. I've come out the other side of it, and through my own experience, hopefully I am armed from that experience to help you through your situation. So as always, unconditional love to you all.